Okay, so now we have to add a weapon so we can start attacking our enemies, correct? So let's do that. You can do all of this in Blueprint, but we're gonna do it in C++ just to keep it consistent. First of all, we need to add a skeletal mesh. So we're only gonna do one weapon because to add more weapons, we need an inventory, we need an equipment system. So we'll leave these two systems for a different series because that takes a long time. We just want to make it our first game in this one. So we're gonna add a you can either add a skeletal mesh or a static mesh. I'm just gonna add a skeleton mesh. So I can show you how to convert static meshes to skeleton meshes. Pretty easy. Okay, so we're gonna add new skeletal mesh component and call it weapon mesh. And then once again, new property. Let's just copy paste this. And then after that, CC collision handler. Easy collision handling component. And for this to work, we need to go for build and add combat components. Okay. Now we set these two new things up. Okay. Add weapons. We do weapon mesh. Create a sub object. Use skeleton mesh component. And then you name it weapon mesh. Set up, cease. Set up, set up, combat component. So combat component needs a couple of things. So collision handler, there you go, create equal sub object. Use CC collision handler component. And you name it text collision handler component. And I would just use the same name as they're doing. So CC is for combat component, and then collision handler component. So we need to bind this a function from here to something. So we go to implementation, and here's one of the delegates that we can use. And we need to override on collision activated. Because when we activate the collision, we need to tell it what collision to activate, right? That's why they give us this enum. Okay. So we do collision on collision activated dot add dynamic is, and we need to make sure we make a function with the same parameters. Okay, so it takes an ECC collision part. So we can put it in protected. So void on weapon collision activated. And it takes in a ECC collision part. And then we set it here. So it is my player controller collision activated. Oh, that's why it's wrong. It's U property. It has to be U function. There you go. And to keep it consistent, we're going to move this up here. We're going to separate this protected. So protected functions and protected properties. So we don't mess up again. Right? So that's it. We bind this delegate to this. And now we do the logic. So it's just a switch statement, given the collision part. Then generate the missing. Okay. So this is the collision part. So you can have a primary item, a secondary item, both hand items, left arm, right arm, etc. Right? Or a custom. So we're only going to do primary item, which is going to be our weapon mesh. So what we need to do, here is collision handler component dot update collision update colliding component, right? And then you pass in the component, which is your weapon mesh, and you pass in the names of all the sockets. So to get the names of all the sockets is weapon mesh dot socket get socket names. Let's find it. Get socket names. Get all socket names, and that's it. That's how you implement this plugin. Pretty much all you have to do. And okay, let's compile. Yeah, let's open up our character. So we got our collision handler component here. We're gonna click on debug. All right. Now we just need to add a weapon mesh, correct? So we don't have one. And we actually have to attach this weapon mesh to our skeleton, right? We're gonna put it on the right hand. But for that, we're gonna open our skeleton and we're gonna add a socket. So we find the hand, the right hand, or the left hand if you want, but I'm gonna do it on the right hand. And R, and then you right click, add socket, and you rename it. Make sure you rename it consistently because you need to type in the name exactly as it says right here. You can right click and copy selected sockets so you get the name, but we're gonna move it a little bit so it's grabbing the weapon in the correct spot. So that's where the pivot is going to be. Okay, that's the attach point. Save it. Now we're going to go back to C++ and actually set up this weapon mesh. As you can see, we set up the attachment here, right? So we're going to do the same. Set up attachment, and the attachment is get mesh or mesh, and the socket name. This is where you put the socket name. So F name, and you use oh, and our weapon. And then weapon mesh, set relative location, vector, so we set up the attachment. Now we actually have to attach it. So this just sets up the hierarchy. And now we actually have to make it stick to the hand. So we do weapon mesh dot attach to component, get mesh, and then it needs an attachment transform rule. So F attachment transform rules, and you select keep relative transform. And then it takes a socket name. So again, of name is called hand R weapon. Let's do snap to target. You can see now it's actually in the correct spot. Okay, now let's move it. Right, save again, and it should have moved. Yeah. Right now we're good. Okay. Now to get a weapon, we're just gonna do it from Pixel. So you just go to Quixel, search for sword or whatever kind of weapon you want. Just pick this sword. You sign in. Okay, so download, and it will just get put. Oh, you have to add it. So you download and then you add it, and it just gets put under Mega Scans. Okay. Make a new folder in abilities called sword. So abilities for the sword. And from the Mega Scans, we're gonna grab this folder and pass it into the sword and rename this to mesh. Okay. But this gives us a static mesh, right? Well, so we're gonna change it to a skeleton mesh, but first of all, we have to change the pivot point. So to change the pivot point is really easy. You just grab this, put it in the level. So you can see the pivot point is in the middle of the sword. We don't want that. Pivot point should be wherever you're grabbing the sword. So we're gonna go to selection mode, modeling, and then transform, and then edit pivot. And you just move it to the handle. And if it's snapping too high, too much, you go up here, snap sizes, set it to 1, and it's gonna start snapping normally. Okay. Then you save. So that's safe. You can delete it now. And if you bring it in again, the pivot will be where you set it. But we want to have a skeletal mesh. So you're going to right click, asset actions, export. You export it anywhere. So I'm going to put it in my dump folder. So we export it. And now you go to where you exported it. Dump. And then you're going to import it. Oh, but before you import it, it's re-importing whatever you have already. So you have to actually change it. So I'm going to call it SKM for skeletal mesh dagger or whatever. And now you can type in skeleton mesh. You don't need a skeleton because there is no skeleton for this skeleton mesh. And use import. And as you can see, now you actually have a skeletal mesh. This skeletal mesh, we're gonna add a bunch of sockets. So these sockets take care of the collision. Okay, so the plugin activates the collision of all the sockets as we put it in the function. It gets all the sockets of the weapon mesh, right? To update the collision. So keep adding sockets. So we'll add another socket. And then we put it a little higher. You put as many sockets as you need. A little higher. So it's been evenly spread. That's too high up. And then the last one, put it on the tip. Okay. Well, you got all your sockets. Close this. Save this. Close that. Close that. Close that. And now we just set our weapon mesh to our dagger. Maybe we should have chose a sword, but we got what we got. All right. Now we play. Our dagger will be in our hand, but we still need to attack, right? In the next video, we're gonna actually do the attack ability, which is super fast. It's just playing a montage. But I'll show you how to get a montage for Mixamo, so you can just do it yourself. Okay, see you then.